Around the time I got out of high school, it was desperately important to me to show off that I was a loner. I always wore a raincoat, would look for things to slouch against whenever I had to stand still, read existentialism on the bus, and wrote shitty poetry in cafes, hoping that some good-looking girl would think I looked so intense and poetic she would want to be my muse. You see, when I was little, I used to watch a lot of TV, and the sorts of characters I thought were cool were the solitary cowboy types, the solitary artist types, or the solitary rogue police officers that had to buck the system for justice to be served. Basically, the sorts of guys who liked their steaks hot, their beer cold, and their damsels in distress. It particularly interested me that these guys would speak so rarely that people would really listen to them when they did, but I didn't originally think I could ever be like that because I thought being alone all the time would drive me crazy. Around the time I started high school, I began to notice that I never really related to other people too easily, but I wasn't worried about it because there seemed to be so many different social groups in school. Certainly I must belong to one of them. I probably went about meeting people in a weird way, though. I would never actually just talk to anyone right off. I would watch various sets of people, watch the way they dressed, walked, and talked to each other, and then I would practice it on my own until I felt like I could imitate it fairly well. Loners are commonly thought of as being unusually observant, and I kind of wonder if it's because of precisely this reason. Anyway, at one point or another, I had infiltrated, I think, almost every social clique at school. I was dumb, though. I think I assumed that close friends would sit around and chat and get all deep and philosophical with each other, but in most cases it was usually just eating fast food, playing video games, and trying to find something to do on a boring Saturday night. My dad always seemed to have this attitude that one didn't really need to bother to make or maintain friends as long as you studied hard, because as soon as you made a great scientific discovery, everyone would love you and people would want to be around you anyway. I didn't study hard, so it didn't work for me, but frankly, it didn't really work all that well for him either. Anyway, I wasn't sure if the people I was hanging out with weren't being deep and philosophical because I was there, and they would start being deep and philosophical after I left, but I think it's much more likely that many people communicate in a way that I don't really understand. If you look at nature, when birds or gorillas hang out with each other, they're probably not discussing anything particularly deep or philosophical either, so I think there's probably some social fulfillment that occurs in the sheer act of being around each other, and I've never really gotten the hang of it. I have to say, though, if you spend most of your time alone, your natural urge to socialize pops up at the weirdest times, and you can find yourself becoming incredibly chatty with the clerk at the supermarket. Or anywhere else for that matter. It's actually rather easy to flop into a mode where you'll talk a lot to the people you meet at random, practically tell them your whole life story, although you usually only do this when you're pretty well certain that you'll never see them again. I'm starting to wonder if more often than not, the average loner is simply someone who can't really deal with being judged. That also kind of makes me wonder if the cowboy guys from the old Clint Eastwood movies became that way because someone made fun of them in the third grade. I guess still when I'm at a cafe or bar, I wind up watching people and just wondering how they do it, wondering what the hell people actually find to talk about. I think I once had this romantic image of the loner finishing his drink and then striding magnificently out of the bar and disappearing into the mysterious foggy night of the city, but the reality is closer to stumbling out of the bar and then hopefully you'll have enough for bus fare and then you go home.